All right, welcome back, my sixth graders. Let's go ahead and get the homework done. I got the even ones tonight. We're going to write each percent as a fraction and as a decimal. When I look at 35%, it equals 35 divided by what? Well, it's dividing it by 100. And that is like multiplying it by 1 over 100. Dividing it by 100 is like multiplying it to 1 over 100. I know that 3 times 1 is 3 and 5 times 100 is 500. And I know 3 divided by 500, I believe it's 0.006. I'm going to double check that with my calculator. I'm pretty sure I'm right. Let's see. 3 divided by 500, 0.006. Very good. All right, let's go to number 12 now. It says 0.1% equals 0.1 divided by 100. Again, we know if we're dividing it by 100, that's like multiplying it to 1 over 100, which means I would have 100 down here. And I know if I move this decimal over this way, I'm going to have to move this decimal over this way. So this would be 1,000. 1 divided by 1,000, I believe we're going to get 0.001. I'm going to double check that just to make sure. Let's see, it might even be 0.0001. Let's find out. 1 divided by 1,000. Look at that, 0.001. Got it right. Okay, let's move on to number 14. I'm going to do this a little bit different like I've been showing you in class. First of all, I'm going to take 322% and turn it into a decimal. So I'm going to make 322. When I turn it to a percent, I move my decimal back 2 spaces. So this is going to become 3.22. That's a decimal form, okay? Now, I'm just going to put an arrow here that says decimal. Now I can turn this into a fraction by remembering if I have decimals and there's no line over it, I can get rid of my line or my dot, put a line under my numbers, put a 0 underneath each one of my numbers, then put a 1 in front of those zeros. So now I have 3 and 22 over 100. I know that 22 and 100 can be both divided by 2, right? So this is going to be, let's see, 3, we got 22 over 100. We're dividing both my numerator and my denominator by a factor of 1 in the form of 2 over 2, because 2 divided by 2 is 1. This will give me 11 over 50, which means my final answer for fraction form will be 3 and 11 over 50. All right, we're on to number 16. Number 16 says use art at the right. Okay. Use the art at the right. It says, how do you express the length of the Queen Mary? It's like the Queen Mary over here. It says the Queen Mary 2 is more than 200 times longer than the Washington Monument is high. So whatever this is 200 times more, okay? As it compares to the height of the Washington Monument as a fraction and as a decimal. All right, so we are comparing the height of the Queen Mary as it compares to the Washington Monument. Well, since it is 200 times longer, I know that I have 200%. Remember, I can turn a percent into a decimal by moving my decimal 2 spaces. So as a decimal, it's going to be equal to 2. Now this is tricky because we don't have a decimal in front of here, right? It's the decimal is behind it. So I'm not going to put any zeros under my numbers because there's no numbers there. What I would remember is if I'm going to turn this into a fraction, any number can be a fraction if I put a 1 underneath it. So this would be 2 as a decimal, and it would be 2 over 1 as a fraction. All right, I believe that number, let's see, 18 is going to be R, or mine. And number 18 says that the fastest boat can reach speeds more than 710 miles per cent, or 710% as fast as the Queen Mary. So our percent is 710%. We can turn that to a decimal by moving our decimal over 2 spots. So we're going to have 7.1 is our decimal. All right, now we can turn this decimal into a fraction. Remember that we can take the decimal portion, get rid of the 1, put a line under it, put a 0 underneath each one. Now we get 7 and 1/10. That is one possible way, 7 and 1/10. Another way I could do this is to turn it into an improper fraction. Remember, that's going to be 10 times 7 is 70, plus 1 is 71. So this would be 71 over 10 fraction. So either one of those could be my fraction. All right, I'm off to number 20. Number 20 says, students set a goal for the number of cans to collect. They got 120%. So they reach 120% of their goal. What is 120% expressed as a fraction? Remember, again, and as a decimal, 120% as a decimal would be moving my decimal over 2 spots. So that would be 1.2 as decimal. And then we could turn this into a fraction by remembering that if I have 1.2, I can get rid of the decimal by getting rid of, putting a line in place of the decimal and putting a 0 underneath it, putting 1 there. I could have 1 and 2/10, which can be reduced to 1 and 1/5. Right? I could also say that I have 5 times 1 plus 1, that would be 6. So I could put 1 and 1/5 or 6 over 5 as a fraction. All right, let's go to number 22. Says there are 350% more students enrolled in Spanish class than Latin class. How does 350% as a decimal prove there are more than 3 times as many students are enrolled in Spanish as enrolled in Latin. So if I took 350%, right off the bat as a decimal, when I move that over twice, that'd be 3.5, right? So this is 3.5, that's 3 times 0.5, 3.5 times as many as a decimal, right? Or we put 3 times 0.5 as many. That would be the decimal form, and doesn't really ask me to put it in fraction form, does it? If I did, it'd be pretty easy. I remember that if I have 3.5, I would get rid of my decimal, put a line there, and then put a 0 into my 5, and that would be 5 over 10, which is really 1/2. So that'd be 3.5 times. So whether I use decimal form, 3.5 times as many, or fraction form, to say I have 3.5 times as many. Both of them prove that I have more than 3 times as many. Let's go to number 24. The unemployment rate decreased by 0.1% in 1 month. Write 1/10 as a fraction and a decimal. So if I have 1 over 10%, how am I going to turn this into a decimal and a fraction? This time they give us a fraction, really, right? And as a percent. So we're going to have to really think outside the box on this. Now we know that when we usually take a percent, let's just say like 15, and we move the decimal back, we're making the number smaller, right? We're actually dividing it by 100 when you think about it, right? We're taking it and dividing it by 100. So this is like taking 1/10, right? And instead of dividing it by 100, we're taking 1/10 and we're multiplying it to 1 over 100. This is going to equal 1 times 1, that's 1, and 10 times 100, that's 1,000. So in fraction form, this is 1 over 1,000. Now to turn this to a decimal, we have to remember that we take 1 and divide it by 1,000. So if I get my calculator and I take 1 and divide it by 1,000, I get 0.001. So this would be equals 0.001. So this would be my fraction form, and this would be my decimal form, okay, of 1/10. Is there any more for me to do? No. Oh, lucky me. All right, looks like the rest of yours. Good luck, and I will see you in class to grade the rest of them mañana. Have a good night.